Brian, you have been a part of the Cleveland business landscape for over 40 years as a reporter, editor, and publisher of Crain's Cleveland Business, and as the Vice President and Director of Corporate Affairs at Dollar Bank, having had direct access to Cleveland's business and transactional communities. Over the course of your career, you've had the opportunity to work with many unique businesses and transactions. What is one of your most favorite or most memorable experiences?
Probably I was co-chair of one of 3 task forces that did a strategic plan for the Cleveland Orchestra.
Oh.
So there were 3. One took a look at Severance Hall, 1 Blossom Music Center, and 1 the orchestra in the community. And then head of the local Chamber of Commerce, Carol Hoover, and I co-chaired the orchestra in the community. And what they were trying to do was sort of break down the real or imagined ivory walls around the institution and bring it more into parts of the community that wouldn't be exposed to the orchestra. That led to the creation of an ongoing community relations effort there, and to this day I think still functions and has done a good job of doing just that. It's really helped the orchestra be more ingrained in the broader Cleveland community.
So what was one of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome during your career, and how does that shape your perspective today?
Well, that's interesting because it came very early, and it's a very long story that would unwind. But it was an ethical problem at a daily newspaper at which I was a reporter, and the owner of the newspaper was putting really spurious, questionable articles into the paper, and myself and 3 other reporters quit in protest. It led to a community blockade of the newspaper. I ended up testifying at the National News Council over it and found out later that this owner was getting slush fund money from South Africa to buy up American newspapers and influence public opinion.
Oh, wow.
That's a short capsule.
That feels like a short version of that story.
But what it really meant was,
yeah.
Early in my career, when I had the chance to either make the wrong choice and not stick to my principles or make the right choice, fortunately I made the right choice. So.
Well, it's good to have that experience so early on in your career, but is there anything you think you'd change looking back?
No, I really don't think so. I was in newspapers, I was in the Associated Press for 6 years, and then of course my 29 years at Crain's. I'm not sure that there would be anything looking back that I would have done differently. I mean, you don't like editorial mistakes that were made along the way, but those are things that happen, just as a matter of course. But no, I don't think I'd change anything.
So how has Cleveland's business community and organizations like ACG Cleveland impacted your career? And what do you see as the value of these organizations?
Well, I'm not sure that they impacted my personal career as much as they impacted all of the business ecosystem in greater Cleveland. And that's really important. I mean, ACG was I remember the early days of the chapter here and our association with Crain's Cleveland Business. But ACG and a host of other organizations like it, whether it's Magnet or the GCP or any of these things, they're all sort of pulling in the same direction. They may be doing different things in different ways, but they're really important because they help keep the economy growing and developing and changing.
So as you look back over your career, who was one of your mentors? And do you recall an impactful piece of advice or experience, personally or professionally, that shaped the rest of your career or your perspective on life?
Well, I'm not sure that it shaped as opposed to reinforced what I already knew, but this is going to be a common name. I consider Dick Pogue a mentor. Dick was president of the City Club the year I was vice president, and then I followed him as president of the City Club. And I remember this very conservative, fascinating, elderly scion of a Jones Day, Revis and Pogue law firm. And I remember seeing him at a City Hall or a City Club forum that was a very liberal speaker. And I jokingly said to him at his table before lunch, I said, "Dick, I didn't expect to see you here." And he, with that twinkle in his eye that Dick Pogue only can have, he looked up at me and he said, "Oh, Brian," he said, "you have to hear all sides of it. Otherwise, you're not going to know how to refute what they're saying." So it was good advice.
Mm-hmm. And a Cleveland staple.
And a Cleveland staple.
So outside of your professional career, and you've touched on this a couple times already in this interview, but you've dedicated significant time and energy to other charitable activities and other organizations. What are some of your favorite parts about giving back to the community, and how has that generosity impacted your life?
You're right, there have been many. I thoroughly enjoyed I was appointed Kent State trustee by Governor Taft, and I really enjoyed that at my alma mater. But probably what I have said over and over again, of my many nonprofit boards that I served on, there was nothing that I was more enthused about and inspired by is Breakthrough Schools. Mm-hmm. It was such an idea by John Zitzner early on, and it has come to include 12 schools. It's the third biggest school district in Greater Cleveland, and they're changing lives of kids in the really toughest neighborhoods of Cleveland.
Yeah, it's a great cause and a great bash and very emotional.
Exactly.
So what do you see as the most significant transaction or project that has occurred in the city of Cleveland over the last 40 years? And why do you think so?
Gateway. I don't know, I remember all too well, I think when I first came back to Cleveland, because I ran the AP Bureau here in my AP career. When I first came back to Cleveland as editor of Crane's Cleveland Business, the whole discussion about a domed stadium was percolating and was coming to a vote, and that was the very start of the discussion of this big sports complex. Mm-hmm. The fact that we did it was really incredible. It took an enormous amount of effort by a lot of people, and I think it's inarguable that it changed the face of downtown. It changed the hospitality industry. It created enormous amounts of jobs, and you know, we're one of the few cities in America that have these facilities right in the heart of the downtown area. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So over the course of your career, you've seen a lot of change, one of which you just talked about, the geographical change of the city of Cleveland. But what's the biggest change in the Cleveland business community from when you've started and now?
I think the biggest change is one that I find a little discouraging, and that is that I remember all too well the days of Cleveland Tomorrow and the CEOs of Cleveland corporations, the big corporations, sitting at the table and really being a part of the discussion of what has to be done to make things better. You know, Cleveland Tomorrow was one of the organizations that got sort of formed into the Greater Cleveland Partnership. I think that while there are certainly a number of executives that are still involved, it's a little different, and I'm not sure that the CEOs are so directly involved anymore. And many of them are not homegrown Clevelanders, so they have a different attitude. They're serving their stockholders, which is important, and not probably taking the kind of time it takes to really sit at the table and delve into the hard stuff. So I think that's probably one of the changes that's probably been kind of a significant challenge.
So in that same vein, what piece of advice do you have for the next generation of young professionals that are looking to be business leaders here in Cleveland?
Young business people are always looking to be at the table, and the best way to do that is to find a nonprofit board that needs young talent. Understand that that's hard work and you have to commit to it. It can't be a resume builder, but the more you do that and do a good job at it, the more you're asked by another group to join, and that's how you really build a solidified network in Greater Cleveland and have business success.
Thank you.
Congratulations.